Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. In 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress MaXXXine Minx finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for MaXXXine. Luke, the time has arrived. One of the biggest, most anticipated horror releases of 2024 is here with MaXXXine. I would say it's this and Terrifier 3 this year. Nosferatu and Longlegs have come a long way. But I mean, I think like going into 2024, you saw this on everybody's most anticipated of the year list. MaXXXine has just been an incredibly hyped up adventure for horror fans and general audiences everywhere. And for good reason. I mean, this trilogy from Ty West has been excellent. We are both major fans of both X and Pearl. I know you and I even said that Pearl improves X to some degree too. So there was a lot riding on this film, but I think the confidence level was very high going into this from not just us, but everybody. And it has been a little bit interesting to see the opinions coming out of this third film, but we're not going to dive into that just now. Let's just talk about how we feel about it and let our audience know, is MaXXXine worth the hype? Luke, how you feeling out of the theater, MaXXXine?
I enjoyed my time with MaXXXine. I know you just kind of posed the question, is this worth the hype? I think, unfortunately, what we're looking at here is when you look at this closing of a trilogy, you have X. Happy accident amongst most people. We didn't know what to expect. Even going into that film, after watching it, after some hype, I was like, it's good. I was, fine with it. It wasn't anything that was breaking down barriers or anything like that. Then we got word Pearl's coming out. It's like, okay, this could be interesting. And then, you watch Pearl, and I had a great time with Pearl. It's probably my favorite in the trilogy. And then as we're compiling those best ofs, and you're kind of putting in perspective of these films, it's like, wait, these keep creeping up the list. They keep getting higher and higher. It's like, these are two really good films. And especially as you watch X, for me, that the status improved on it. I enjoyed my time with it even more. So unfortunately for Ty West and MaXXXine here is that we've had over a year, and the quality of those two films, the hype, the bar is set so high that I don't think it's ever going to be met because how anticipated this film was. And I got to say, this isn't my favorite in the trilogy, but I had a good time with it. It's a film that I like. I didn't love it, but I think it's got a lot of great elements. I think it's got a lot of great storytelling and certainly a lot of great performances.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think that the hype has been so built up that it reaches those monumental heights of just how are you going to satisfy everybody, especially with the kind of trilogy that we're getting here. We were just talking a little bit before this on just kind of the comparisons we've seen online and just the kind of visceral reaction to it. But I walked out of MaXXXine. Sorry, I almost said X. I walked out of MaXXXine. I adored this. I thought this was such a fun film. And, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I did say on the limited things that I looked into in my top 5 films you should watch before you see MaXXXine, that I think that they were going to go for something a little closer to something like a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or a Boogie Nights. And yes, essentially, we get more of a starlet story instead of a pure slasher, or instead of like a kind of psycho style Wizard of Oz fairy tale slasher, if you want to call it that. It's this film really is diving deep into the Hollywood scene. And not just that, but the time and the era that it's set in. And honestly, I absolutely adored the whodunit storyline. Does everything work for me in it, though? Not really. I kind of find the resolution of the whodunit storyline a bit underbaked, which, I mean, I guess it's been set up throughout the trilogy of what this might be. but it is something where I just didn't feel the punch that I think it was trying to give you in those moments. But everything before that, I was so invested. Honestly, what we get and what they're setting up could have been a completely separate thing, and I think I would have loved it even more. I honestly think the fact that they bring it in a sense full circle, it just made me feel like, man, I think that this film took enough of a different approach to this installment that I kind of wish they would have kept it a little bit more contained. I don't know. I might be on my own there, but I adored it. But I'm right there with you, performance wise. This thing is a true to force. I mean, there are so many great performances.
Yeah, as I was watching this, I kind of kept going. I kept playing this game of, I think this is my favorite performance. No, I think this is my favorite performance. And what a pleasure it was to see Kevin Bacon go full on, horror and bad guy esque. It's like when we saw They/Them, that was our hope, is that we get something very vibrant from Kevin Bacon. I got to say, we absolutely do here. His character is just phenomenal. I think he is a scene stealer. I would say probably if I had to narrow it down, coming out of the theater, I enjoyed my time with his character the most just because of what he did do. Yet his role's limited because he's not, the main character, but he's around enough that I think when you see him, you're just engulfed in those scenes and really enjoying what he's doing. And the way he plays off Mia Goth's MaXXXine, I think, is just so well done. Just his mannerisms. There is a couple scenes in here that one big scene that I found myself really enjoying, that they were going through kind of, he's in the lot set of Hollywood. And I really just enjoyed my time with that. Oddly enough, I know there's always a talk about Kevin Bacon playing Freddy Krueger. And I got to say, watching him run in those scenes in this kind of creepy, almost jokingly, it just saying almost comedic, but also terrifying way that he's running, I was like, that would be a good fit. But, there's a lot of great stuff going on in here, as you were talking about, kind of this long form storytelling that we're getting, we're kind of connecting some dots from X. And I will say, looking at that, it's one of those things with the narrative is pretty straightforward. It's nothing that's really going to come with a left hook and out of nowhere and really catch you off guard. So, for me, I would say maybe I was slightly underwhelmed just because that narrative is so straightforward for me. And, as the trailer came out and, I was thinking Psycho 2 and what could this mean? It was just a more straightforward narrative, which I do think works for the story. It's just, if you're looking for this big hook in a film, I think you might leave a little underwhelmed. But the storytelling, the atmosphere that they build in here for the 80s Hollywood, I think is just so well done. We have I know I'm covering a lot of ground here, so I apologize, but
it's fine.
There's a scene with MaXXXine walking down the street, and we're kind of, in the background, there's guys doing karate in a karate class, and they're really encapsulating the 80s of these kind of minute things that, if you look back, like, oh, that really did take the 80s by storm, So it was like one of those fun little things from Ty West where it's, we're not hyper 80s with like Stranger Things and things, we kind of get some elements in there, but I think Ty West had a great knack for that storytelling and really conveying the 80s and really feeling like you're there.
Yeah, this feels very like adult 80s as opposed to like a Stranger Things, which focuses on more of that kind of fantasy kind of element to it. And I really loved the take of just the 80s setting in this. I think they really nailed it. And, there's so many great callbacks. Obviously, we're in Hollywood, so they're going to be pretty constant. But there's a lot of great ones. You mentioned Psycho 2 in your trailer breakdown. And I know there's a line in there that probably got a good little chuckle out of you. It did for me. I was the only one in the theater to kind of raise a fist like, yeah, they did it. But yeah, I feel like all the performances are really top notch. Honestly, I mean, Mia Goth is, she's the queen. She's the one that we absolutely adored in this. 100% kills it as Maxine Minx. She killed it as Pearl. It's the same here. She does a great job. But outside of Mia Goth, I am torn between Kevin Bacon, Giancarlo Esposito. Oh my God, as her agent. So great. There is a scene involving, I will just say the three of them. It's Oh, it's my favorite scene in the movie, I think. Just the way that all climax goes and all that and how they handle it. I love Giancarlo Esposito so much. And this is one of those characters as Teddy Knight that I will probably think about anytime that man is brought up. But there's an actor in here who kind of has a very subtle performance, but I just found him so damn likable. And that's, I believe his name is Moses Sumney.
Yes, thank
Dude.
you. I was gonna bring that up. Oh my god, he is so great in this. Just his character in general, like you said, it's more of a muted performance. It's nothing like crazy, like we're having these scenes, but the way he kind of accompanies Mia Goth's character in this, I think is so well done. I mean, I think as horror fans, we're all gonna resonate with him. If you haven't seen it, you're gonna understand it when you watch it.
Yeah, he is such a subtle performance, but I love the chemistry between him and Mia Goth. I bought their friendship from the moment they started hanging out. I thought that they were just so in tandem with each other. And again, very muted performance, but so believable, so great. And not to spoil anything, obviously, with any character, the resolution with him, I'll just say, it's something, man. It is something.
Very much so. Very much so. From a style perspective, from where they go with it, the timing of it, just so well done.
Yeah, my wife and I talked about that quite a bit on the way home. It's one of those things where it's like, yes, I think that as a whole, this movie does do a lot for me. I feel like I went in knowing that in my heart of hearts, I think this is going to be less of a pure horror film and lean more into this whodunit kind of celebration of 80s Hollywood. And that's what I got. And that's what I was really excited and happy to see. Now, do I understand a little bit of how people will go into this expecting a little bit more horror and probably be a bit disappointed? I think so. I think that if you're looking for something that's a little closer to X, especially with how hard that went into that 70s slasher style, this is just not that movie. Like Luke said at the beginning, it's very giallo. It's very much a murder mystery in a sense. And yes, again, to bring it up, the third act, the resolution of some of those threads from X, I don't know. I felt like that didn't necessarily stick. I don't know if that stuck the landing very well for me. It feels like a bit of, well, we got to do something with this. When I think that they had earned their keep, that they could have done something a little bit more interesting and a little bit more, dare I say, almost very Scream 3-esque. I guess because it's in Hollywood, I'm just thinking, if there would have been a reveal of somebody who was only in this movie, being kind of our central antagonist, I think I would have, been fine with that. I think it would have been great. But there is so much in this film that had me grinning ear to ear that I can't sit here and say that like MaXXXine was a disappointment for me at all. I really enjoyed my time with this. I'm honestly walking out of the theater. I was just sitting there thinking, I will probably go back and see this again before it leaves theaters. Cause I felt like I was just in my happy place with this movie, as weird as it is, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I think it's more of a film for, I guess, people who love cinema more so than people who are into it for the blood and the guts and the slashing.
Yeah, and we have to look at it this way, and I think this kind of poses an interesting question, especially if anyone wants to leave a comment or anything like that, or, we could always do a video on it, who knows, but how much horror does have to be in a horror movie to define it as horror? You know what I mean? Where you look at Late Night with the Devil, where, a lot of that we're doing a late night show and odd things are happening. And then, by the end of it, all hell breaks loose. Even stop motion, we have the stop motion characters. Yes, it's an eerie atmosphere, things like that. So you have to ask yourself, how much horror has to be in a film to qualify as a horror movie? Because this one does have horror in it. It says horror elements, and they're sprinkled in enough for me to say, yeah, this is a horror film. And I think, it wasn't like Ty West went into a film. It was just making a film. I think the edict was, the other films are horror. We're going to do a horror film here. So, for me, I think there's enough horror in this to qualify as a horror film, but everyone's different in that sense. So I'm intrigued by that take. And especially, as we talk about that third act, for me, we watched Infested and we did our best of the year so far, and I brought this up in there where it gets a little actiony toward that third act for me, and I was like, we do bring it around back with some horror elements to it, but for me it started kind of started losing me a little bit. But I think it was probably a necessity to the story, because how do you end something like that? So
can I say that I think I know the exact, I can't say it, I think I know the exact moment that happened for you, because that happened for me too.
Yeah.
So when we get off this, I want to ask you about that, because I think it was the exact moment.
And so for me, I think there's enough horror elements in here for me to qualify it. I can see some people having an issue for it, but I think that's where you have to ask yourself, what qualifies as a horror film? Like I said, this one, MaXXXine, I had a great time with. I don't think it's my favorite in the trilogy, but I think it's right in line with everything that we've seen here. And oddly enough, I talked about this in our best of the year so far, in comparison to Sting and Infested, where I find Infested to be the better movie of the two, but I can find myself watching Sting more. And this one, Pearl's my absolute favorite. But I could see myself revisiting MaXXXine more than the other two, just because of the atmosphere, because of that storytelling, and I love whodunit. So, for me, I think this one was a fun time. It doesn't hit that must-see for me. It is definitely a recommend, because I think there's so many well-done things in here, shot composition, just the atmosphere in general, and some of the horror in here is really gruesome. So for me, easy recommend.
For me, I can honestly say I need to sit with it more before I can rank it amongst this trilogy. I think there's so much to love about the whole thing. I appreciate that each film was a different approach. I appreciate that, we tried things. And the thing that I think that I can leave this review, this spoiler-free review, and say is that I think that this is Ty West and Mia Goth and this whole X team at their most confident. I think that this was their most risky film of the trilogy. I think they knew that they were going to alienate some of their audience with this, and I think that they were willing to take the risk because we've been with them this far. We can just let them tell their story, and I appreciate that they went out and they told this story the way they did it. Because again, I think that, that's what's going to make this trilogy so timeless. And I think it's films like this that are like, well, we're not going to try to, deliver you the same, pizza every time. You know what I mean? We're going to give you a little something different each time you order. And I think that that's the strongest part of this. And with that being said, this is a must-see for me. I think that MaXXXine absolutely landed. I cannot sit here, even though I admit that the third act is a bit weak in that resolution. And I it's tough to say without spoilers. So we are doing a spoiler review with a couple of the buddies who've been on the channel before. But I can say without a shadow of a doubt that after that resolution, the way that they actually wrap up the film, I was head over heels for. Absolutely loved it. I loved the symmetry, everything. It left me with a smile on my face. I felt good. I felt like this was a satisfying, ending to this story, and a little bit of like, damn, I really hope I get to see MaXXXine on screen again. Not in the movie, but like the character. Just that's how I felt. I do want to see the movie again, but yeah, it's a must see.
No, yeah, and I totally understand that, because I think there are so many great elements into this. It was really well done, and it's hard to live up to those expectations, I think, especially when you have X and you have Pearl, and then you have over a year layover of trying to close out this trilogy. Everyone's going to be clamoring for it. But when you're looking at this for in line with the trilogy, none of these films are in line with any of the other ones. X is completely different than Pearl. Pearl's different than MaXXXine. Everything is different. I think Ty West wanted to take us on an experience here and provide us with something completely different in each installment. You're not going to get that in any other trilogy around. I think he really did shoot for the stars here, and I think he produced when the time came. MaXXXine, not my favorite, but I think this is probably number one in terms of rewatchability for me.
Yeah, and if you twist my arm a little bit, I currently, and again, this is very fresh, I would say this is maybe my second favorite behind Pearl. But again, anything could happen. It could be 3 days from now, I could say X is my favorite. That's what I love about this
Nothing's
trilogy.
written in stone, you know?
Exactly. So it's just I am happy to say that these 3 films exist. I can't wait to own this, so that way I can just put them on whenever, just like I have with X and Pearl over the last year. I just throw them on randomly whenever I just want to get transported. I love these movies, and I'm really happy with what they did here. And yeah, I hope that some of you in the comments will agree with me. But obviously, I know that there's already going to be a ton of detractors. There's going to be people. I don't think it's going to be as bad as Halloween Ends, but you know, I've seen some comparisons. You know, but yeah, I am certainly a MaXXXine fan. But yeah, let us know down below, guys. How do you feel about MaXXXine? Did this hit as hard and as well as it did for you as it did for me? Are you a little closer to Luke's side where it's a bit in the middle? You know, you like a lot of elements. There were some elements that didn't quite work for you. Or are you just completely disappointed? Did this completely kill the trilogy for you? I need to know. Comment down below. Get this video a like. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. And yeah. It's gonna wrap us up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.